A freilichen, a listigen Chanukah, and a guten Chodesh. Today was Rosh Chodesh, Habol Lenu L'Toiva, and the Bnei Yissaschar discusses why the only Yom Tif on the calendar that we have a Rosh Chodesh smack in the middle of the Yom. In Chanukah, we are always advanced a couple days, and then we have a Rosh Chodesh. Sometimes sometimes Teves is 1 day, sometimes it's 2 days. But it's interesting that we are with a Rosh Chodesh smack in the middle. And we know that there is a famous question that the Pnei Yehoshua posed as to the halacha is that tumah, anything that's defiled, is hudcha b'tzibur or hutra b'tzibur. It's pushed off and it becomes mutter. So really the whole thing that there was such a big deal that they found the shemen. They could have taken any shemen that was defiled by the goyim, and simply the fact that it was entire Klal Yisrael who wanted to use it, it would have been able to be used, as the Gemara says. So the Pnei Yehoshua goes into a discussion of the Chiba Yisera, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted it to come out that there should be a nitzachon, but Klal Yisrael wanted that it should be a nitzachon in the greatest measurement and level of love. Meaning that yes, the halacha gave them the pathway to be able to have a functional Bais Hamikdash. But they didn't want to go with just basics. Klal Yisrael saw that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was holding their hand, so therefore they wanted to find shemen that was completely pure, tahor, to be able to show their love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so they went way out of their way. And interestingly, the Bach says on this that the whole reason that the story of Chanukah happened was because they were nisrashel ba'avoida. The Bach says that the Klal Yisrael, they got used to doing it. They did everything, but there was nothing special. It's like when we say Shemana Esrei, do we still have the same reverence and the pachad and the overwhelming response in our action to what the level of the opportunity is? And likewise, the Bach says that when they got into the mode of doing the avodah every day, it didn't mean much to most of them. That they felt that this was something, yes, they're required to do, but it doesn't mean that they have to go above and beyond. Now that they got this slap, so to speak, and that the V'timu kol hashmanim, that what they did over here, that when they finally got the upper hand, they appreciated it and they wanted to show that there's no more just doing. And we get used to it and it means very little. But they wanted to go way out over there, above and beyond, and to show that this attitude of freshness was how they were going to deal with a Bais Hamikdash at this point. the Rosh Chodesh came smack in the middle. Because what is the essence of Rosh Chodesh? As all the Sforim say, that the moon gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it disappears. We don't see it at all. And then we suddenly see this Chadesh HaChodesh, that the Levana comes back. We see in the middle of a dark sky, we see the points and the privileges of Geula. And that is what Rosh Chodesh represents, and that's why it comes out, smack in the middle of Hanukkah, because the problem was Nisrashlu Yedeya Me'avoida, and freshness and attitude of throwing oneself in totally is the correction of that negative attitude. And that's why Rosh Chodesh is right there, and that's why they were able to pick up the pieces and continue with the avodah in the Bais HaMikdash with a totally different attitude. I do want to acknowledge Torah Anytime, which in a magnificent way and a most magnanimous way provides Divrei Torah worldwide to Yidden. The fact is that part of bringing a new attitude into something is represented by the shamas, because a shamas, we're yoytze the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah without a shamas. In other words, the halacha is you're supposed to have a shamas there, and it stands higher. Why? Because you don't want to mistake it for part of the Ner Chanukah if it's in the same level. So it's above. But the Meforshim say it's above for another reason. Because what is a shamas? If you have Ner Chanukah and you have nothing to light the Neiros, you don't have the mitzvah. So what is the shamas? It's a facilitator. It enables a Yid to have the Ner Chanukah, because with the shamas we light the Ner Chanukah. And that's the reason these Meforshim say that the shamas is higher, because it stands above all else. That means, yes, we do the mitzvah with the actual flame, but we give credit to a facilitator, somebody who helps and avails the ability and the possibility to do a mitzvah. That person stands up above and beyond. And that's why, say these Meforshim, that the Ner Chanukah have one level, and the level of the shamas is much higher, because the distinction is the pat on the back for the facilitator. And that's why it stands up above all else that is there. Now, we know that there is a ksiva on Rosh Hashanah and there's a chasim on Yom Kippur. And Moshe Rabbeinu succeeded, as I mentioned to you, Yom Kippur time, he succeeded in getting Hoshana Rabbah, an extension. And I told you that he wanted to get the chasima for Klal Yisrael at a time that there is simcha. And Sukkot is simcha. So he got it extended, the chasima and the final statement for what's going to be that Shana, that year, he got it extended to Hoshana Rabbah. But says the Bnei Yissaschar that there are many who get that Chasima on Yom Kippur. And says the Bnei Yissaschar, and there are many that it's extended. They're standing in between, somewhere in between, and they get till Hoshana Rabbah. But says the Bnei Yissaschar that there's 1% of the people who don't have their Chasima on Yom Kippur, and they don't have it on Hoshana Rabbah, but they get their Chasima on Zos Chanukah. The last and final day of Chanukah, the 8th day, is called Zos Chanukah because of the pasuk Bezos Yechupar Avon Yaakov, that Klal Yisrael, for those that didn't get it, they get it on Zos Chanukah. And that's the reason in many Batei Midrashim and Munkach and Bluzhev and Skolyer and all these places, that the Rebbes in those shtiblach, they end up giving out lekach, like it's customary to give lekach before Yom Kippur. And the reason we take it from the Shamas is because if someone had a gezeira on that year to become poverty-stricken and they had to come on to tzibur for tzedakah, that they get the tzedakah through, they makayim that gezeira with the shamas handing them the lekach. And that's why in these shtiblach that some people may have their chasima on Zos Chanukah, that lekach is given out, and every Rebbe wishes to each and every chassid in their kehillah a Shana Tova Umesuka and a Gemar Chasima Toiva. And that's done customarily, and Zos Chanukah this year falls out Erev Shabbos on Thursday night, Friday, and everyone should treat it, because no one knows who got their chasima and who didn't get their chasima, and should treat it with the fashion of the reverence and the delicacy of what a Yom Kippur is. And even though on Zos Chanukah we can ride in a car, we can do all of these things, but if someone indeed got their chasima on Zos Chanukah, it's a day to make sure that there's no wavering to the negative side. So he should be giving tzedakah, and he should be davening well with the zrizos and with the frischkeit and with the zest and the zeal and everything that should be put into a davening. Now, we know that and Zos Chanukah really represents the culmination of Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuos, and then we go out into Golus, and that's the send-off is Zos Chanukah, and that's why we have to reinforce as we leave Chanukah shortly and rededicate and reapply all the zrizos and the varmkeit and to wake up our sensitivity to the word appreciation, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a gewaltige opportunity to be able to come out of this whole cycle from Elul into Rosh Hashanah, into Yom Kippur, into Sukkot, and then we go into Hanukkah, that we have with us the fortitude and the ability to withstand the winds of Golus and the challenges that Yidden have throughout the years of their life. Now, I want to say to you that Mikeitz, which is the Parsha this Shabbos, only once every 24 years does not fall out on Shabbos, Shabbos Chanukah. That means we know that most years it's Shabbos Chanukah, Mikeitz. And if there are two Shabbosos, so it's Vayeshev and Mikeitz. But once in 24 years, only Vayeshev is the Shabbos Chanukah. And Mikeitz is the day, like this year, that the last day of Chanukah is Friday, and Shabbos is Mikeitz. It's not Chanukah anymore. And some offered the insight. You see, the or of Hanukkah isn't just, we light the menorah, we know we have the mitzvah, we sit there and we watch the Or HaGonos, and then we go into the latkes and into, like many have, a full Suda for their families, for their orchem, every night of Hanukkah. And it's a gewaltige mushpah for Klal Yisrael. Now, Mikeitz, the Arizal says on the first words, Vayehi Mikeitz Shenasayim Yamim, that the secret of when Mashiach will come is in those first words. And those words, and we understand, Mikeitz means the end of the Golus, Mikeitz. And Shenasayim Yomim, he explains, and he goes into an arichas about that. And some say that on a year, that once in 24 years, that Mikeitz is not Shabbos Chanukah, but it's like a cup that you take a pitcher and you pour into the receptacle, to the cup. That all those of inyanim of or doichem harbe choshech, that even a little bit of or, you take a candle, you go into a pitch black room, the room is filled with darkness, and you come with one little candle and it dispels the darkness in the room. You could see anywhere you want in the room from that little flame. That is Hanukkah, and some say that when Hanukkah falls out, that Mikeitz is not the Shabbos Hanukkah, that it awakens the ability of the Hisgalus of Mashiach and the Geula Shlema, because the entire Hanukkah pours into the next day. Like many tzaddik and mekubalim say, that if a Yom Tif goes into Shabbos, you have Friday Yom Tif, and then the next day is Yom Tif, the second day of Yom Tif, or it's the middle of Yom, but it's connected, that the Yom Tif goes straight into the Shabbos. That Shabbos is not only the koyach of Shabbos, but it's the koyach of being saturated with everything that entered into Shabbos with the Zman, with the Tekufa. So we are going into Shabbos Mikeitz, which is really, you see, it became the Geula for beginning the next week, Vayigash. It was Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef meeting each other. And then Od Yosef Chai. So the possibilities that come out for revitalizing ourselves by going from an entire Hanukkah and then it being drenched, it being poured into the Shabbos because it's attached to the Shabbos. You go from the last second of Hanukkah into Shabbos. It's mixed into it. It's like the Arizal says, Erev Shabbos. Why is it called Erev? Because it's a lashon of me'urev. It's mixed in. That part of Shabbos after Chatzos on Friday pours into Friday. And that's why it says the Arizal that no Yid could ever feel the same on a Friday afternoon that he feels on a Tuesday afternoon. Because the Friday afternoon already has a taste and it's mixed in. It's Erev, Me'urev with Shabbos. And here we're going from Hanukkah straight into Mikeitz, which is a very powerful dimension for Klal Yisrael to seize the opportunity and heighten through tefillah that there should be Geula Shalema. Now, the pasuk begins that Paro had a dream, and there were 7 fat cows, and then appeared the skinny cows who devoured, that means they ate the fat cows. And Paro saw this dream and he went wild. He called in all of his chachamim and all of his advisors, and no one had an answer. And the butler spoke up and said, well, it's a dream, and look, I had an experience. I was in jail. Paro threw me into jail, and together with the baker, and the baker never survived. He died. And I was restored to my position and stature of where I was before. And that's exactly what this Jewish boy told us. So we know that Paro got him right out of the jail. They washed him and they gave him a good haircut and the fresh, beautiful clothes. And he became the viceroy. And he became the viceroy, Yosef Hu HaMashbir, because the Nakuda of Parnasa, he was the Mashbir not just for Mitzrayim. The Medrash says there was a famine in every city in the world. They were rushing, they were coming to him to survive. They gave their land, they gave their cattle, they gave everything, because they ran out of the money. And being an advisor to Paro, Yosef was loyal to maximize the opportunity for Paro. And that's why he did what he did. But why was Yosef and the story as it developed because of the dream of Paro? And he was so wild when he had this dream. Because every dictator, and Paro was a dictator, I mean, there were 30,000 children thrown in to the cement or to the water, even though the Medrash says that these babies came out on the other side, that they were able to live, according to one opinion in the Medrash. But a dictator's biggest fear is that the weak will overpower the strong and mighty. Paro saw the 7 fat cows as he was the most powerful man in the world at that time. And his nation was like the backbone of nations. And suddenly he sees in a dream that all of the power and fat and healthy and strong cows are devoured, are swallowed up by the weak and the insignificant. And that's why he was so touched by this dream and was so furious and so devastated by what he saw, because he thought it was an omen. He thought it was a message in. Don't think that you are this or you are that. Because you see how quickly the skinny cows can devour the fat cows. And he wanted to send as a healing process that it would never happen all of these eitzes, because that's why he went and he had the different opinions how to be able to react and to do that this shouldn't come about, that he loses the reign and the majesty of being a ruler over pretty much the world. It was Mitzrayim, but at that point it was the most mighty and the strongest nation on the globe. So that's why he was so concerned. But he saw that there was hope in what Yosef said to him, because he felt it fit in like a glove. And that's why he immediately made him the viceroy and gave him over all Paro to be able to supersede his fear. Now, the kasha, why it says Ufaro cholem, that Paro is dreaming. It should have said the Meforshim say Ufaro cholam. He had a dream. We're telling a story of what happened there. And that is the answer, because a person has to realize that things of the past may have been glorious in its full luster. A man could have made $100 million. He shouldn't become a balgaiva, because in one day he can lose the whole $100, the 100 million. He can lose it. Lo aleinu, lo aleichem. No yid should ever have the taste of that type of a calamity. But the pasuk says cholem, because whatever you think happened yesterday, don't go away, whether it's super good or super bad, that is the status quo and nothing could ever change or become worse or become better because the situation you're in. That means I gave an example of very good that could turn sour. But people, when they get despondent and disappointed, they lost this, they lost that, they lost an account, they lost a business, they lost lo alinu, lo aleichem, a child or someone in the family, that it's the end of the world. It's not the end of the world, because it happened yesterday, and the today of today gives the power to turn from what your worst fear is into the best new opportunity of tomorrow. And that's why it says cholem, and it doesn't say cholam. Now the Chavetz Chaim said a very, not only useful, but direct motion of a vort that provides for us a blueprint and an attitude for our lives. And he asked a question, and he said, if you go out to the world and you ask them, and Paro had a dream, and because of the dream, Yosef got out of jail. And he was brought to freedom. That's what most would say, because that was his ticket to freedom. But the fact is, it's the direct opposite. You see, like the Gemara says, that when Hashem invokes a sickness in a person, that means he sends a malach, and the person suddenly discovers, lo aleinu lo aleich, he has Crohn's or he has diabetes, never had it before, and suddenly has it. He sends a malach, and he tells the malach that this sickness that you're going to give to that person, it's going to happen this and this time of day, and this hour, and this minute and second. And you're going to take it away from the person when you're supposed to take it away. But when you're supposed to take it away, the malach doesn't have the power to keep it there an extra minute, because the second that it was destined with hashgacha protis, that it had to come and it had to go. Now there's some people it doesn't go, lo aleinu lo aleichem, and it stays for the rest of their lives until they die. But they're able to realize that a second longer than it was supposed to be for me, the sickness, it's not going to happen. Says the Chofetz Chaim that it wasn't that because Paro had a dream, Yosef HaTzadik was freed. It was because Yosef had to be freed, and the second came for his freedom, that Paro had the dream. And that is the blueprint, that's the plan of action for each and every one of us, each and every day and night of our lives. That realizing that we have to exert ourselves in the strongest, most effective way with our Torah, with our mitzvahs. Life is an opportunity, and we have to take life. People who are 30 and 40, it's going to be forever. Like in their minds, life is here forever. What do they have to worry about? What do they have to this? Just do, just learn, just make money, just whatever they're doing. But the truth is that we have to seize the opportunity, because we don't know when it's the last opportunity. And that's what the Chofetz Chaim was telling us, that the fact that we have in a second the direction of the world. I mean, does a person have to be a rocket scientist to open his eyes and to see what's going on today in our lives, in the world? There was never such anti-Semitism. Right? You talk to people, 3 moments of this and 3 moments of that. Who would have believed that on Shmini Atzeres, which the Zohar HaKodesh calls the Yehuda Shlim, it's the biggest day of the year, bigger. Yom Kippur is not Yehuda Shlim. That means Yom Kippur is bigger lahalacha. But we're talking in the ruchnius of the essence of the mahus of a day like Yom Kippur. The Zohar HaKadosh says that the day that we have Shmini Atzeres, and who would have believed on a day like Shmini Atzeres that babies were being thrown into ovens, and what was happening, this sad and the terrible, terrible tragedy that took place, that we discovered there was so much difficulty. But this comes at a time when we have to put forth our reassigning of our attitudes in the challenges of each and every day. Now, if you take a look in the Sedra, you would see that there was a major difference between Purim and Hanukkah. Purim, the goal was to kill out every Jew. Hanukkah, no one wanted to kill anyone. They just wanted total assimilation. And the chazkus that came out from Hanukkah, because it came a point that no matter how much the Romans wanted to, or the Greeks wanted us to assimilate, they just wanted us to take off, to dissolve, to dilute everything we were doing with Yiddishkeit, that should be it, and they had no problem with everyone continuing to live. But that was their overall goal. So we really have to realize, as we sing in Mosur, Ufortzu Chomos Migdolai, that the fence taking the people into the place of the Bais HaMikdash, that fence was knocked down, and it says that when they were victorious and they put the fence back up, every person that saw the fence bowed down 13 times. Why? Why not? I mean, you want to recognize it, you want to acknowledge it, bow once. But the answer is because, as we said before from the Bach, that nisrashlu ho'avoda, that they became so lax in what they were doing, that they wanted to show that we got the message, and that we're going to go in and we're going to savor every minute that we're in the Bais HaMikdash and we're doing the avodah that we are doing. So when they saw the fence that was put back up, they bowed 13 times because they realized that every day of Hanukkah was keneged another midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It means, like the Arizal says, that every night of Hanukkah is keneged the Yud Gimel Midas Rachim. The first day is Erech, Apayim, Kale, then Erech, then Apayim, all the way down to Noitzer Chesed, and says the Arizal that from Noitzer Chesed to the end is the 8th day of Hanukkah. It's the whole thing of all of those different midos that are there, and that produce the Chesed and the Hashpot, the Klal Yisrael, goes down from Noitzer Chesed, which is on Zos Chanukah, and all those things, Noitzer Chesed, Lo Alofim, No Seyavam, Vesha, V'chatov, V'nakeh, to the end. And that's the freshness that we opened up when we said that the Bach says Nisrashli, then they got lazy, that by bowing down 13 times, it showed that they were literally licking their fingers and they were loving with such a mood each other. That was the loss of what took place by the loss of the Bais Hamikdash then. And when they came back in, they realized in front of their eyes were such miracles. I mean, if you take a look at Rashi and Zos HaBracha, on the pasuk it says U'misan of Min Yekumun. Rashi in the second pshat says that Moshe Rabbeinu was referring to the future educator, that the timing of what took place then, that it was something which carried them through the toughest of time, but the level of the miracle was so unbelievable that Rashi says that there was only the Bnei Chashmonoi and Elazar and Beno, so it was 13 people. And Rashi says, Keneged Kama Rivavos, against tens of thousands. So we realize how the actual level of nest that took place. Because you imagine that the 12 or 13 people going out against 60,000, and that's what happened. And they were able to survive it, and they were able to glorify it. And it's the only time that we have lahodos or lahalel, that the concept of davening extra and coming with the baby and everything else that they had in their hands, 13 people against all of the goyim, and yet they were able to be menatzeach. I mean, it wasn't just a miracle, it was a miracle above and beyond. So, and these type of miracles seep into the mahus of Klal Yisrael to stand for them in time of need. Now, I want to say to you that the pasuk says that when the brothers came and Yosef was doing certain things, that we think he was putting them through the Mekubon, discuss what each thing was that was being misaken, the pirza, or the breaking of what had been done by the brothers. Let's not forget, the brothers were very, very big. I've quoted to you on occasion the fact that the brothers were not put to death when they did this selling of Yosef was a big miracle. But the Zohar Kodesh says because there was no malach that could do anything bad to the Shiftei Koh, because that's the halacha, that if someone sells somebody, kidnaps them and sells them, and they get money for it, that's a chiyuv of misa. It's a death penalty. But no malach could have effectuated the death sentence to the malachim, to the Shiftei Koh. So they were killed by the Hasara Aruge Malchus. And that's when the punishment came to them. But when Shimon was taken, because as the Medrash says, that Yosef was worried that just like Shimon and Levi went and wiped out the city of Shechem, that they could have gone and wiped him out. So he separated Shimon and put him into jail so he wouldn't be together with Levi. Now, when the brothers were all together, The pasuk says they said avol. And the word there, avol, means truth. In truth. In other words, let's be honest. Ashemim anachnu, we are guilty. Asher ra'inu achinu b'tzoras nafsho. We saw our brother suffering and he was begging us not to do this to him. Asher ra'inu achinu b'tzoras nafsho b'hischaneno eleinu. That he was begging us. V'lo shamanu. Al kain ba'a oleinu hatzara hazos. And Hasidic Rebbe's touched, I heard it from two separate sources. Avol, Ashemim. Now, we know when the world was created, there's heaven, and there's earth, and there's water on top and on the bottom. And Hashem wanted to create the world first with Eish and Mayim. And he said, no, Eish is din, is severity, it's gevura. And Mayim is chesed. And if it's equal, there's Eish and Mayim, the world cannot exist. Too much din. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He took away the aleph, and it remained only the shin with the word mayim. And that's why we call it shamayim, not ashamayim, not with the aleph. That was taken away. It was not the full power of din, of fire. So the brothers said, Ashemim anachnu, because the word Ashemim is Eish and Mayim. We went not with like HaKadosh Baruch Hu did the heaven, that only the shin of the Eish was there and the Mayim was full. The Chesed was full, Mem, Yud, Mem. But we went with the full din against our brother, Ashemim. And the word Ashemim spells Eish and Mayim. Aleph, Shin. The Aleph, it wasn't just a little Midas Hadin, but it was with the full thrust of the very bad news that the full din was going to be employed. Because even though they sat down as a bezdin, and they paskened that he was chayav misa, and that was their heter, supposedly. But when you say the word avol, that's the problem, the Meforshim say. Everything could be justified, and then you come in with the avol. Well, and it says, why did Reuven want, if there was a bezdin that paskened he was chayav misa, why did Reuven want to come back and save him? There was a bezdin that paskened he was chayav misa. So why was he coming back to pull him out and to bring him back home? The pasuk says, La shivo el aviv, to bring him back to their father. But the answer is that they realized that they had some negias, because the pasuk says something in the Torah is 100% vayikanu vo'echav, that they had a jealousy for him. So how can you paskin if you have jealousy for some? It says every dayan, the halacha is he has to see his hands and his everything is taken in a way that it has to be 100% ehrlich and honest with no side cheshbonis. If the brothers had Vayikanu Vo'echav, Reuven thought, and that was what motivated having this bezdin, how could they see straight and look at the Shvatim and then look at Yosef HaTzadik with no imbalance, with no part of what is good or what is bad. So they said, Avol Hashemim anachnu, that we are guilty, and that the Hashemim is spelled with the full Midas Hadin, the full Aleph Shin, the fire. And then the lower level of having full chesed with partial din didn't happen. Now, we know that when the brothers finally came back and they brought Binyamin in our Sedra, it says they sat down and they had a Suda. And the pasuk says, Vayochlu, Vayishtu, Vayishkeru imo. They drank wine. Now the Medrash says beferish that from the day that they saw their father lost his Ruach HaKodesh and he was sitting there besak with a sackcloth and he was mourning, and this was going on for 22 years, that they thought that the only right thing is that Kohen Gadol that was there, and that they came and they drank. Forgive my tiredness. I just got off of a plane from Eretz Israel from our Einikel's bar mitzvah, and I'm not a good traveler, so I'm fighting the jet lag. But the vort is a gewaltige vort, because the question is, if they took on never to drink, why suddenly they sat down at the table and they're drinking wine? I mean, Yosef knew it was the brothers, so you could say, oh, he knew now there's going to be a revival of the brotherhood and the love. But the brothers didn't know it was Yosef. So what suddenly after 22 years did they drink wine? It says, Vayishtu, Vayishkeru imo. They got drunk almost. They were sitting there drinking the wine. So the answer is, what brought this whole kinna around? They thought that Yosef was a favorite. Now they brought Binyamin, and the pasuk says that Yosef gave clothes to each one, but to Binyamin he gave 5 times what he gave to each brother. And Yosef saw there wasn't a shemetz of jealousy. The whole problem that this whole Mitzrayim and Yosef and Mechirah was because there was jealousy. Now he purposely gave Binyamin extra because Binyamin was his full brother. The other Shiftei Ko were only half brothers. He was a full brother. And he was from Rachel and Yosef. And it could have ignited jealousy again, like they had for Yosef. But there wasn't a mashahu, a shemetz of jealousy. They knew that they had cured the sickness of jealousy that was once in the most minute, these were tzaddikim gemurim, but in the most minute way that existed when they were sitting there and they saw that he got 5 times as much and there wasn't a machshava of jealousy by any of them. So they knew that it had been cured. The problem that brought about this whole parsha was cured, and now we could drink wine, and that's why he, at the end, did drink the wine. And We're in Hanukkah still. We have the power. We learn a Mishnah. We learn a Blat Gemara. We were Maver Sedra. And I would be mechazik everyone to be Maver Sedra, Shnayim Mikra V'Echad Targum. There's even one day that the Targum was given on Har Sinai, that it's Min HaShamayim, that it's so. And Nebuch the Arizal describes what happens to a person who is not Maver Sedra when he's nifter and goes to heaven. I won't even go into any aspect of it, but you have no idea what kind of punishment he gets if he was not being Maver Sedra. So, and it's not easy to be Maver Sedra, but we have to try harder. A person only gets to his goal when he pushes himself, when he tries harder, and when he does more. And all the Shefa Rav should come back to Klal Yisrael as we go into Mikeitz, that it's the end of Golus, the end of all of the suffering, and it should be in the fullest sense of Vnei Yisrael Yoitzim Biyod Rama with Achenu B'nei Yisrael, and worldwide where Yidden find themselves in challenging, difficult sakana situations. Have a good week.